Welcome back, everyone. This is the fourth episode of the series. For those of you who are new, I am Jeremy, and this is Twisted History. Today's topic will be a split episode. We will be covering the Great War in the first half and the Great Depression in the second half. So, for those of you who do not know, the First World War started when Serbian revolutionary Gavrilo Princip had shot Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife on June the 28th of 1914. Some of the underlying causes for World War I were militarism, imperialism, nationalism, and alliances. Think of the acronym MENA if you're having trouble remembering that. The war itself had started for Britain when Germany had tried to shimmy its way through Belgium to kick France's ass using the Schlieffen Plan. The plan technically failed when Belgium alerted Britain that the Germans were up to no good, and they also destroyed railroads to prevent the Germans from advancing. On August the 4th of 1914, Canada was officially brought into the war as a Commonwealth force. Sir Robert Borden's government had been pressured by Liberal opposition to act according to the War Measures Act, causing Minister of Militia, Sam Hughes, to gather 25,000 volunteers and a new Canadian Expeditionary Force to train at Camp Valcartier in Quebec. Originally, French Canadians had approved of the war efforts, but when conscription came in August of 1916, it caused further division within the country. As one of the bloodiest conflicts in Canadian history, World War I had a profound effect on our country, forging a new identity for years to come. Ypres, Vimy Ridge, and Passchendaele are the most noteworthy battles, but we will summarize many events and topics along the way. Let's take a look at these battles. The Battle of Ypres occurred on April the 22nd, 1915. The Germans had released chlorine gas for the first time against French Algerian troops, causing them to retreat, or should I say tactically redeploy to a safer area. Yes, the French don't tolerate retreat, you see. This redeployment had left the Canadian flank exposed. The Ypres salient was the last major Belgian town in Allied hands, offering protection for the French ports on the English Channel. It had to be protected at all costs. Outgunned and outnumbered, the Canadians had held their ground and fought counteroffensives even after facing direct gas attacks. The battle lasted until April the 25th and earned a new reputation for Canada, but at a cost of 6,000 men. The Battle of Vimy Ridge happened in April of 1917. The Canadians were preparing to mass an offensive on the strategic Vimy Ridge. Previous French and British attacks had left hundreds of thousands dead from the high-up and well-dug-in German defenders. Under the command of Sir Julian Byng, the Canadian Corps would be ordered to secure the ridge at all costs. Employing a risky new tactic created by artillery officer Andrew McNaughton, the Canadians would fix over 1,000 pieces of artillery to yeet shells in a forward motion, while troops follow closely behind. It was known as the Creeping Barrage. After training for the attack for weeks on end, the assault commenced on the morning of April the 9th of 1917. After overwhelming the German defenders with a head-on bayonet charge, Canadians would have taken the hill, but it would take at least another 3 days for the entire area to be secured. At least 3,500 Canadians were killed in the attack, but it forged Canada a lethal reputation. The story of the Battle of Passchendaele happens to be a bloody one. As the Russians had backed out of the war in March of 1917, the Germans would increase their presence on the Western Front twofold. In October of 1917, in the Flanders area of Belgium, the British Field Marshal Sir Douglas Haig had basically ordered the Canadians to join his mass slaughter and deliver victory. No big deal, right? Sir Arthur Currie had initially objected the orders, as the loss of life would be great in the unfavorable muddy conditions, but he was forced to take action nonetheless. The Canadians ultimately arrived to relieve the Anzac forces and make repairs to the shell and rain-damaged landscape. Currie had launched a 4-stage assault on the 26th of October and had captured the ridge by mid-November after 16,500 Canadians had been sacrificed, along with hundreds of thousands of British soldiers. At the beginning of the war, Canadians were seen as undisciplined, fearsome lumberjacks as painted by enemy propaganda, but their disregard of proper military behavior had actually differentiated them between their British allies. All in all, the First World War had seen roughly 600,000 Canadians enlist, and Canada had suffered around 56,000 deaths. Many other offensives that the Canadians took part in included Amiens, Canal du Nord, Cambrai, and some others, but those ones are very good to mention to your teacher for bonus marks, if your teacher does that sort of thing. Alright, time to move on to our second topic of the episode today, the Great Depression. The years after the war had begun to soar as the Roaring Twenties showed an increase in commercialism. It was a feel-good decade where one could listen to jazz on the radio, drive their car to the movies, and all in all just let the good times roll. However, people got a little too comfortable as on October the 29th of 1929, the stock market crashed, launching the world into the Great Depression. Many say the depression was a result of widespread drops in commodity prices and sudden declines in economic demand and credit, but no one's really sure. Between 1929 and 1933, the country's gross national expenditure had fallen 42%, and 30% of the workers were laid off, making 1 in 5 dependent on government relief for survival. Canada's system of dispensing welfare to the jobless wasn't necessarily adequate. The federal reluctance to tackle unemployment had caused 4 Western provinces to collapse fiscally. Prime Minister R.B. Bennett had actually mailed money to people out of his own wallet, but he refused to provide work for the jobless. Between 1932 and 1936, homeless men were sent to relief camps run by the Department of Defense for some reason, and were paid 20 cents a day to work on roads and cut trees and other monotonous shit like that. In 1935, a protest against the camp's conditions led to the On to Ottawa trek and culminated to the Regina riot, where 1 police officer was killed and many civilians were injured. With the tough times that Canada endured, many people looked for different means of political ruling, seeing as to how they considered their government was failing them. The Communist Party of Canada was outlawed from 1931 to 36 and was banned when the war started in 1939. The RCMP had to enforce the padlock law, which is essentially the police busting into your home like the Kool-Aid Man if you're suspected of being a commie. And imagine that. Imagine if you were being broke into, but when you tried to call the police of the break and entry, you realize it's the police that's breaking into your home. It was only until war broke out in September of 1939 did Canada's economy start to pick up, but the Great Depression had taken many lives and deprived the country of hope for almost a decade, truly making it the dirty 30s. Alright, so that's going to do it for this episode. I sincerely hope you enjoyed it, albeit it was a long one. I summarized the Great Depression as best as I could because there's just so much shit to cover, but making it fit into my recording schedule also meant I had to split the episode up. But nonetheless, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next episode.